that's what she's saying. I'm like, okay.
Oh my God. Zaynab. Why? Oh
David, come and be going.
I'm going. I'm just wondering why. How old is she now?
She's 4.
4-year-old singing.
Yes.
But
I mean, I think she's been exposed to, yes, she has some older friends around her
Yeah, I
who
think
picked
so.
her before I reach home,
so.
in the evening, and then she's been spending lots of time with
on
them.
TikTok.
So, yeah, she'll go, Mommy, picture. I'm like, okay. And it's becoming a thing when we're having our bath in the morning. Yeah, so
Maybe
Lagos.
you should play the song so they know what she's talking about.
I will try and do that, hopefully. We're just about a minute away from our very first break. But do not forget, Lagos, let me tell you this. We are continuing the conversation that we started last week. And I do have Professor Kaladada Korubo joining me again today. Guess what? This is an avenue for you to bring on all your questions. Yes, anything you want to understand in relation to paternity fraud, DNA testing, and all that you've heard about it as a woman, as man.
More conversation, more talk, more right after this.
Meals have a way of taking us on a journey. And when you add plenty of vegetables like efo, ugu, and season with the rich taste of North seasoning cubes, even better.
So, go ahead and elevate your meals with more vegetables and the rich taste of Knorr cubes. Today, eat for good.
This is Ireti Bakare Yusuf, the host of Borderlines. First and foremost, it's been a whole year of the new show, Borderlines. We've covered several global issues, and we will continue to cover even more. Now, if you have any suggestions regarding Borderlines, whether it's how you want us to be better, what you want us to change, it'll be an interesting thing to learn from you. We will be most appreciative if you could share it with us. You will have to go to any of the Borderlines posts. Borderlines on YouTube at Nigeria Info 99.3, on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos, on Facebook, we post all the Borderline posts there, and also on Twitter, which is now called X. Just go there in the comment section, put your suggestions, and honestly, we're going to review as many of them as possible. If you like, you can hashtag Borderlines, all right? And if there's a story that you had been wanting us to cover, global events, global news, that's what we talk about. Until then, have a fabulous new year. Bye-bye, all the best.
We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
We are back.
We're back on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
All right, Lagos, if you are just joining in, this is 99.3 Nigeria Info. I am Zaynab Yakin, and Matani's Line Show is what you are listening to right here on the dial. Time is 28 minutes gone past 12 o'clock from our beautiful studio, in case you want to check your watch or your clock to confirm that. Yes, so I did say we are back with Professor Kaladada Korubo on the show today. And let me tell you again, Professor Korubo is a professor of hematology and blood transfusion, consultant hematologist at the River State University Teaching Hospital. She's a professor of she's also the current Dean of Basic Clinical Sciences at the College of Medical Sciences, River State. She is an examiner for the fellowship examination of the National Postgraduate Medical College, Nigeria, NPMC. And she's the present National Vice President of Nigeria Society for Hematology and Blood Transfusion, and is an international member of some international societies such as American Society of Hematology and British Society for Hematology as well. Professor, big thanks for having you join us again on the show today.
Good afternoon, Zaynab, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Prof. May God honor you. I mean, it's been 2 weeks back to back on the show. I don't take this for granted. Yes, this is a very important conversation to be had, particularly for us to understand. Don't forget, the conversation is challenging the assumption of infidelity and understanding the science behind paternity fraud. A quick recap here. Last week, or even before I go into that recap, research, this is what research is telling us. A civil rights group campaigning for truth, justice, and equality in family law for children, their parents, and grandparents, called Fathers for Justice, in a publication titled Global Statistics on Paternity Fraud, a deep dive into discrepancies and prevalence on its website, October last year, 2024, reveals that while Jamaica is frequently cited as having the highest rate of paternity fraud with a staggering 34.6%, Nigeria follows closely at 30%. It says countries like Canada and the UK report much lower rates, around 2.8 and 2.8% and 1.6 respectively. So simply saying that Nigeria is following Jamaica in paternity fraud in the world, and it is mellowed down in UK and Canada. Okay, I remember last week, earlier in the week, I think that was Monday 22nd, it was in the news where a leading specialized molecular laboratory, DNA, Halley and Rainbow Specialist laboratory with a headquarter in Lagos, called for the introduction of mandatory DNA paternity test as part of birth registration process in Nigeria. So this is not a conversation that we are just digging up from anywhere or from nowhere. This is something that has been making the headlines every now and then. You'll be surprised that after today's show, if you go online, there's something about this paternity fraud. There is a report again concerning paternity fraud and DNA testing. So it's a hot topic. All right. So today, Professor is back, and one of the reasons Professor is back on the show today, I did see a report that Professor also cited last week on the show, where she said a study was carried out, and then it was found that most of the time the first child is mostly affected. I'm going to be basing my question on these to start with, because we need clarity on it. Prof. Kaladada, now, on the part where you refer to a test center here in Nigeria, which did a review of paternity fraud and found that mostly the first child is affected. What's your thought on this? Do you agree 100% to this, that mostly first child is affected?
Okay, thank you so much, Zaynab, for that introduction. And by way of a recap, I think I want to reinstate that when we talk about paternity fraud, we're talking about when a mother intentionally, conceals the identity of the biological father of the child,
yes,
making some other male claiming that some other male is the biological father of the child. So, with reference to this study that was done, it was done by one of the centers that frequently runs paternity testing. And they found close to about 30% paternity fraud. That is samples that, the father in question tested negative. And from their own study, now this is a single center experience. What I mean by a single center, that is just from one laboratory.
Prof, I think I would agree with you, because also the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research found that 27% of paternity fraud conducted in Lagos, particularly in this case, so which is also close to 30%. So it's not just a one source kind of report.
Yes. In terms of the percentage of paternity fraud, you had different studies from different centers saying 20 something, about 30. I've even seen somewhere they said 32%. So that's the rate, which is high. But what I'm referring to is your question on it being mostly the first child affected.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that with reference to that statement that mostly the first child was affected, that report was coming from one center's experience, one center's observation, that from this percentage of paternity fraud that they got, the child most affected the children most affected were usually the first child. Now, we could go on to analyze that, but their own theory, of course, there's no, pure scientific basis for that, but their own theory for that was that it could be in the paper that they published in their report, they were hypothesizing that a lot of females maybe, they may have more than one partner before getting married. And so at the time of getting married, maybe, that child did not belong
to the father.
They may have been pregnant at the time of getting married. That happens a lot. Sometimes you go for a wedding, a woman is visibly pregnant, but it's not only when a woman is visibly pregnant that she's pregnant.
Absolutely.
It's within the first 3 months of pregnancy. Nobody would know. You would attend the wedding, but the woman is already pregnant. And if she had multiple partners at the time, even she may not know who the father of the child is at the time. So that was their reasoning, that a lot of men may have multiple partners before marriage. And so that is why the first child is usually affected. Then usually by the time the woman is now married, the second and subsequent child, she's now with one partner. So that was their own reasoning behind it. And I tend to agree, because somehow that is the reality of the times that we are living in. We tend to have, that happening commonly in this generation.
All right. Thank you, Professor. As I said earlier, Lagos, today's conversation is for you in particular, for you to be able to to ask your question. Though we still have more that we are going to be conversing, about with Professor, but it's very important because of limited time that we had last week. All right, so the numbers to call are 020127709993, 0201465790, 0809-5975805. And here is it, in case you missed the show last week and you probably didn't catch enough of what Prof said while she was doing a brief recap of what was said last week. I would love to do a quick recap on that. So last week on the show, I remember Prof speaking keenly about why it is important not to do one side testing. If you as a father is heading to a test center to carry out a DNA test on your child, it's very important to also get the consent of your partner, the mother of the child, because it is important that both of you do the test together, not just you, because there is also the issue of maternity fraud, which might not even be unknown to the woman in question, because we've had the cases of baby swap in the hospital, error in sampling is another issue. Contamination of sampling is another one. And I did ask a Prof on whether paternity DNA testing should be made mandatory, in Nigeria. And she said, well, we have other issues like a sickle cell, which we should also pay attention to. So this one should be something to be done based on personal decision. Prof, I hope I'm right. So if you want,
That's my personal opinion anyway.
yes, that was your personal opinion. I remember, and she did say that it should be based on personal decision. She also made us understand that DNA testing is a legal test. It's just that the increase in the rate of testing now is a result of relocation. So if you are relocating to the abroad with your family, one of the requirements will be that you go for for DNA testing, and this is why the statistics is now coming out more and more that it is high in Nigeria, because what is informing that is the wave of Japa. So not because that woman not because women are being suspected of infidelity. That is not the main reason paternity fraud is being reported, but due to relocation, the Japa syndrome. Now, someone dropped me a message. Okay.
Can I quickly add to that recap?
Yes, please.
So when we were talking last week, I think one of the things the time was really short.
Right.
But one of the other reasons for paternity fraud, which we must really take into consideration, is sometimes the woman knowingly pays off people to give a wrong results. So what does that mean? Sometimes we have people that know that this husband in question is not the biological father of the child. And so the woman goes ahead to pay the lab to give a fraudulently positive result to the father. So this is important, so that, why am I saying that? The fact that a father has a positive result does not always mean that it is actually positive. It's wrong practice, it is fraud, it is medical fraud, but we know that there have been a few cases like that. And that is why I also would buttress one of the things I said last time. If somebody is conducting a paternity test, I suggest that, especially if there's a high index of suspicion, I suggest that it should not be done in only one center.
Yes, I remember you said at least 2 laboratories or 3 to ascertain accuracy of a test outcome. You said a lot of things. I remember you delving into chimerism, which you said where 2 DNA. Please talk to us about chimerism again.
When we talk about chimerism, first of all, is extremely rare, but when you are trying to explain reasons for why a test result, when we're talking about chimerism, we're trying to explain why somebody who is actually the biological father may test negative. Okay, so we're trying to give scientific reasons, an actual negative result where the father is actually the father. So there have been very few cases like that, and in such one of them that widely reported, the mother was definite that she was faithful to her husband and that he is the father of the child. They went on to investigate and found out that he had chimerism. So what happens in chimerism? So like when twins are being conceived, sometimes you can have like one spermatozoa fertilizing 2 eggs, or you can have 2 separate spermatozoa fertilizing 1 egg that splits. There are different ways twins can be formed. So if you now have a situation where 2 different spermatozoa fertilize the egg and the eggs, and these were supposed to be twins, but in the very early stage, it now merged together and formed one human being as against a twin. So that human being will actually have 2 sets of DNA. Human being will actually have 2 sets of DNA. So when you do the chick swab, because samples can be taken from the so you may now be seeing a separate DNA from the DNA that fertilized the child in question. And in so doing, it will now be interpreted as a negative result. So that is why we said chimerism is also an example of why, paternity fraud could. In fact, in that case, it's not really proper to call it paternity fraud. It is more likely explaining why a biological father may test negative against the child.
I also remember, thank you so much for that. You may be hearing chromosomes, you may be hearing all manner of scientific terms, and this is because we are trying to understand the science behind paternity fraud, okay, while we also challenge the assumption of infidelity on the part of women with regards to paternity fraud, because it is easily linked to women when there are issues involving paternity fraud. All right, so you are free. Time is yours now to come through with your questions. So I noted a question last week. Where is it? I'm looking for it now. Okay, I think I have it here on my phone. I copied and pasted. Fade Shara last week was asking. Last week, Fade Shara from Ijegun sent a message asking that, Prof, how important do we need our men to understand that they don't just carry out paternity fraud without involving women, because women are usually the first suspect. So how important do we need to make our men understand this? That is a Fadishara from Ijegun last week.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get the question. How important is it to involve women in testing?
So she says, Prof, how important is it for us to make our men understand that paternity fraud, she meant DNA testing, I'm guessing. How important is it to make our men understand that this is not done alone without involving the women? So I think what she's saying is you should reiterate that it's important for men to know that when they want to carry out paternity testing on their child or the children, they must also involve the mother.
It is extremely important. And if you remember last week, I gave an example of another lady who paternity testing was done and the father, came out as negative. Right. And, the assumption was that the woman was unfaithful, but the woman was so sure that she was faithful to her husband and that this child belonged to her husband. That is, the husband was the biological father of this child. And
I remember.
They investigated right down to the hospital where she was born and where the child was born, and later found out that that was not even her child, because I think they also did a maternity testing on the child. Okay. And that was when they realized that the mother was not also the biological mother of the child. And so they traced it right to the hospital. And found out that there was a baby swap. So in the event that there was a baby swap, if you are testing only the father, it's going to come out negative, and then the blame will be on the mother that the woman was unfaithful. Meanwhile, that's not what really happened. There was a baby swap. We also gave the example of cryptic pregnancies.
Yes, I was going to get your attention on that.
That should also be another reason why the mother should be tested. Because cryptic pregnancies, the thing about cryptic pregnancies, it works both ways. Sometimes the woman knows that this is a false pregnancy. So the woman is in the know, and that is actually paternity fraud. But sometimes the woman doesn't know. These usually happen in couples that have been looking for children for some time. So the woman goes to a shady fertility clinic, and then they start pumping her with injections that make her bloated, the abdomen enlarges, and she looks like pregnant, and so on and so forth. And then they tell her, don't go and do any scan. The baby will not show. The baby is at the back, and all sorts of funny stories.
We've had that conversation on the show. Yes, you're right.
Yes. At the time of delivery, come in for a CS, they make the woman sleep, and then the woman goes home with a baby. So sometimes where the suspicion comes up is that after you go home with the baby, the normal response after pregnancy is lactation, to be able to breastfeed.
Right.
These women are not able to breastfeed, so there's a problem. So, like I said, there are two ways. The cryptic pregnancy, sometimes the woman is involved in the fraud, but if the woman is not involved, and in this case, if anything happens and then the father wants a paternity testing and only the father is tested, the woman would not know. But we recommend that if a paternity testing should be done, both parents in question should be tested. It's better for clarity.
All right, Fadeshara, Prof has just responded to your question. Ephraim is saying, Zaynab, send us the WhatsApp, send us the studio message, send us the studio you were trying to say send us the studio number on WhatsApp. Okay, I'll call it again. 0201 277 0993, 0201 465 7190, 0809 5975805. Do not forget you can as well catch the conversation from last week on our website at www.nigeriainfo.fm. We have Port of Maternity Line show on there as well as other shows. All right, so I have another one from Peter. Where is Peter messaging from? Songwater. Peter says, good afternoon, Professor. Great to have you back on the show today. Prof, this issue of paternity fraud, don't you agree, as Zaynab asked earlier, that DNA testing should be mandated at the birth of every child? Peter. Prof, did you get that?
Yes, my personal opinion, which I said before, is I think it's a family issue. I think it's a social issue. I don't think it's a national issue for which we should be talking about things that should be mandatory. The reason I'm saying that is that people choose their partners, people choose their spouses, and so on and so forth. So talking about making paternity testing mandatory, even in the Western world, they're still struggling with that because these are issues. So we talked about prenup last time, prenuptial agreements, prenuptial, things that they sign before marriage. So what we can do is that we can encourage people to get your prenups, and in the prenups, you can, put it there that as your children are born, you can have, paternity testing done for them. In the issue of making it mandatory, for it to be mandatory, it has to go through laws. It has to go through law and then become a law in the country for it to now be implemented, for it to be mandatory. That as children are born, paternity testing should be done. And I feel personally that right in the country we have much more pressing both health and otherwise issues than this social issue of paternity testing.
Thank you, Professor. So we have a caller. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Did I just send you the WhatsApp number? The number on WhatsApp?
From Sulere.
All right, you're who?
I'm Badamosi from Sulere.
Hi, Badamosi. Welcome on board.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Professor. And I think this discussion is very important for our children nowadays. And I think they should not really, because she said that because of the firstborn always have this problem, and that
study reveals
not always.
From
that study, they had most of the cases from firstborn, not always.
Yeah, but this is our society today, because of the law to get a husband or get somebody hooked on and then have a child and say, I'm pregnant and you must marry me and things like that. This thing is very rampant. And my own suggestion is that men shouldn't bother so much about their firstborns now, because I'm so not like in those days where there's fidelity, and people, it's terrible. What I'm hearing today is really I don't know what to say. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, Mr. Badamosi, thanks for calling in. Okay, Prof, you wanted to say something?
No.
Okay, all right. So, to build on what the last caller said, Badamosi, this is not Prof saying that it usually affects first child, and it is not only Prof had seen a report, a study of which she made a reference, and also as cited in a Punch report .com in 2023. There was a report referencing, I mean, there is a report because the report is still exists. The report references senior geneticist with the DNA Center for Paternity Test, Allen Avenue, Ikeja, Abiodun Salami, as to revealing in an interview that from his experience, most firstborns were not fathered by the husbands at home. According to him, this is because the ladies had a prior relationship before getting married. Okay. Also, specialists, including cell biologists and the rest of them, are saying if 10 men walk into their facility to get a DNA test done, 7 come out with a negative result. So Prof had earlier clarified on the first child. Now we have another caller. All right, apologies, that was a bad one. Please do try again. 02-012-770-93, I have another question from.
More news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.
This dollar wahala now, wow, everything expensive. Now true, but make we look am well, my brother. See, your shoe na from Italy, your shirt na from Turkey, your phone na from China, your car na from Japan. In fact, everything wey dey your body so na import the importer.
Abegi, how that one take consign dollar?
If price of dollar go come down, e get many things wey we suppose do. Like wetin? Number 1, we suppose dey export pass how we dey import. Number 2, we suppose dey buy more made in Nigeria products. Number 3, make we support local business. And number 4, if you wan send dollar and other foreign currency enter Nigeria, make we dey use international money transfer agents.
What you dey talk dey make sense o.
Oh, country people, make we join hand, reduce the pressure on our naira, grow our export market, and increase forex inflow. Now our hand e dey o. This message now from Bankers Committee.
All right, Lagos, we are back. You guys were calling while we were on break. Now we are back on. You've stopped calling. Call again. Why? I mean, today's show is for you. I was telling Prof on break that look at them. They were calling, okay, 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. I was going to read a question from Omobolawa. Okay, yes. The question goes, good afternoon, Zaynab and Prof. Nice job you are doing. Please, can you ask Prof, should a mother come up with the idea of, darling, can we do a DNA test on our children? Would that not come off as being too confrontational? Omobolawa is asking. Prof is laughing. What's going on? We can't hear Prof's voice. Oh my. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize I muted during the break. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for your question. I don't know, what the background would have been if the woman in question maybe was accused of infidelity. Yes. And if she knows that, this is the biological father of her child, she has every right to suggest that let's have a paternity testing done to prove that, she had not been unfaithful. I guess that is a scenario to look at it with regards to the question that she asked.
All right, ma'am. More people are calling in. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, nice to have you here.
I'm calling you from Ilushaga.
All right, Ilushaga.
You guys now, it just made me cry.
What happened?
Because I lost my parents when I was 12 years. So in my 15, 17, 18, all that, in street, I pregnant 2 girls. born and now run away. But now I've seen those children now with another man. You understand? The lady now take the child to another man. Now I'm seeing those child now, but I can't go back to them again.
Are they not your children?
They are my children, but I run away because even though then I didn't have a place to stay.
Oh, you ran away, sort of leaving your responsibility. Am I correct?
Yes.
Oh, Prof. Emmanuel, I mean, this is a big confession, I must say. You are owning up.
Emmanuel, thank you very much for your contribution. I think this would, it takes two. One, if you want to come back to claim paternal ownership for the children, the woman is now, from what you're saying, in another relationship. I don't know how young the children were then. So I don't know if the children are aware that, the man she's with is not their biological father. But for you to come back and, to come back into the picture, you would have to contact the woman. And of course, I believe the consent also of her new partner would also come into play.
Thank you, Prof.
Sorry,
Emmanuel, please do all that you can to get connected to find your children and your woman back. I mean, the children especially, because she has moved on, like you said. Okay? Please feel free to call into the show from next week again. I would love to. Oh, I'm away on leave from next week. Oh my God, but I'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Emmanuel, please call back in 2 weeks' time. We need to have this discussion. Prof, thank you so much. We are out of time already. Thank you so much for your time. Lagos, it's time for the news. Prof, I'll find you behind the scene. We have to go.
Thank you so much.
All right, Lagos, it's time for the news. Please stay here.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info. 99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info.